Hello and welcome to Inside News. I'm Dale Matthews. Mike Jones won't be with us for the next couple of days, but we'll be okay. So this meeting that has been going on with the Board of County Commissioners and the people that they've chosen to be on the Budget Committee is, I think, without a doubt, the most important meeting that's been had all year. If you believe that public safety is important for Josephine County. So what we've done over several nights here is we brought you pieces of this so that you could see how all the pieces fit together and how there is a concerted effort on the part of Margaret Goodwin, to come up with some solutions that would, as you can see over my shoulder, it says the Titanic's Lifeboats. We didn't get to that part of the show last night. Where there could be at least some solutions to keep us temporarily out of icy waters. It's falling on deaf ears. The people who are running the boat, they don't even want the lifeboats to be available. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. What I've strived to do here is to bring to you, from a long meeting, 2-hour meeting, a section tonight, which if you only watched this, will give you a very good indication of where we are and where we're going with funding of the Sheriff's Office and with public safety and with the future of Josephine County when it comes to property taxes, even the $2 bill on the state level. It's all there. And you're going to see the players here very clearly laid out in a way that's going to be undeniable into next year. So I'm going to start with a part that I think is very interesting. The prelude to this is that Peggy Goodwin had come up with 3 different suggestions for the Budget Committee. And she had them all ready to go, one after another. And she had just suggested some temporary solution to some of the crisis that we're in, the fiscal emergency that we're in, the law enforcement emergency situation that we're in, that would help solve part of the problem and at least set funds aside in a way that could be accessed by the Sheriff's Department. She was not suggesting that a bunch of new people be hired or that they be put in training for 9 months or 12 months or whatever. She was suggesting something completely different. And for the last 20 minutes before this, which you've seen already, the Budget Committee was debating, well, I don't think that we can hire people and then have to say goodbye to them. This wasn't what she was suggesting. That whole section, that entire vote, was about something she was not suggesting. That wasn't her motion at all. But they trotted out the same old tired arguments. And so I just kind of wanted to start with what she's trying to say to the commissioners and to the Budget Committee members, that's not what she meant at all. And then she's going to go straight into another suggestion of some way to help alleviate the problem. Let's take a look.
Mr. Seligman, you'll be next.
That's the wrong one. That's the wrong clip. Okay, let's take a look at this clip instead. Sorry about that, everybody.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to point out that my motion was not to hire any new deputies. My motion was to put money in reserves so that we can retain the deputies that we already have instead of having to lay them off when the funding runs out.
Good clarification. Thank you very much. Would you call the roll?
Now take the vote.
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
No.
Mr. Welch?
No.
Mr. Heck?
No.
Mr. Brumback?
No.
Mr. Hess?
No. Motion fails 5-1.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have an alternate motion. I move that we establish a separate emergency reserve account for Title I road dollars pursuant to HB 4175 that can only be used for either roads, or sheriff's patrols, and which can only be used if there are no other funds available that could be used first.
That sounded fairly complicated, and I wonder if House Bill 4175 allows that.
Well, the House Bill 4175 allows these specific funds, Title I road dollars, to be used for sheriff's patrols. Otherwise, they can only be used for roads. So my motion, just to clarify this, is to create a separate account that can be used for either one or the other when there's an emergency and there's no other money. But this money could not be used while there is other money that could be used for either of those. But the money, we're not actually supposed to discuss this without a second, so I will wait.
I'm sorry that seems to be frozen every once in a while, but this is the feed that we got from the county, so it's just going to have to do.
Well, I appreciate the clarification on the motion. So floor is open for a second on the motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The way that we currently account for these funds, we commingle the Title I road dollars, which can be used for either roads or sheriff's patrols, with the fuel tax money, which can only be used for roads. The problem with commingling these funds, first of all, it's not a sound accounting practice to commingle funds where the funds from one source can be used for two purposes and funds from the other source can only be used for one purpose. Last year, when I asked how much money was available to be used that could be eligible under HB 4175 to be used for sheriff's patrols, I was told we didn't really know, but all that we really, because the funds are commingled, but all that we really know is that the funds that we did receive within the last year would be available, and that's where the $500,000 came from.
Great.
So in the future, say 3 years from now, we run out of sources of funding and we say, you know what, I really wish we would do that. We really should take some of those Title I road dollars and use that for sheriff's patrols. How much is available? We don't know because they were all commingled with the fuel tax revenue. Now, here's the thing.
Now, part of the thing is, this is the budget committee. The budget committee makes recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, which is a little strange because half the budget committee is the Board of County Commissioners, and they're the ones that choose the budget committee. But okay, go figure. The budget committee can make the suggestion, at least the suggestion, let's not commingle the funds. So where's the problem?
We establish a fund that can be used for either of those purposes and no other purpose, and can only be used as a last resort when no other funds are available to be used for that purpose. It wouldn't take anything away from Public Works, because if we were, say, to have an earthquake next year and we needed all this money to get the matching funds for FEMA money, and there wasn't enough in the Roads and Bridges Reserve Fund, this money would still be available for that, just like it is today.
Ms. Goodwin, the only reason I think the concept is clear in my mind. I think it's probably clear in the committees.
I just
and for
want
this.
Now, wait a second. This is a budget committee meeting. She is a member of the budget committee, and she's explaining something. And Simon here stops her and says, I think we all understand what you're saying. I've been through that before. Well, we don't need to hear from you, Mr. Matthews, because we already know what you're going to say. They really said that. Yes, they did. And we don't need to hear any more explanation because basically they've already made up their mind. So she's explaining what it is that she's trying to do, because they didn't understand her at all or didn't want to understand her the last time and were voting about, should they hire more people? And she said, that's not what I was suggesting. But they voted on it anyway, 5-1, of course. So now he's stopping her because, you see, this is what happens when Simon Hare is head of the budget committee. He was elected to do this, okay? So he decides to stop her.
For the sake of time, I think we understand your motion. Thank you for that
For a
clarification.
sound accounting practices, these funds should be accounted for separately.
So the only caveat to making the judgment of whether or not it's sound or not is this practice was in place prior to the House Bill 4175 allowing Josephine County access to that. So it was all well and good prior to this legislation. You might have a point that
Yes.
it should be
That's correct.
amended, but okay.
That is correct.
Any other discussion, Ms. Walker?
Mr. Chair, does the Budget Committee have any authority to establish a fund in the county, or does that have to be done by the Board of County Commissioners?
There's a good question. Here's Cheryl questioning the purview of the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee makes suggestions about, the budget to the Board of County Commissioners, 3 of whom serve on the Budget Committee. And is this really something the Budget Committee can suggest? You see where this is leading? Here, Peggy Goodwin is saying, well, perhaps we should set aside a fund that's going to help fund these emergency situations. And now Cheryl Walker is saying, well, maybe that really isn't something that the Budget Committee can even suggest. Remember when the money came in, just dropped out of heaven, and they weren't expecting it on the Board of County Commissioners, on the county, and they had this money, and they could have said, well, let's make this available to the sheriff. Instead, they said, well, we'll talk about that at the next meeting. And then the morning before that next meeting, which is this one, Cheryl Walker said on KJO that they had already deposited in the bank account, in the savings accounts, in the emergency account for roads. They hadn't before, but they had by that morning. So see, that's done. Now what she's saying is, can this even be considered? Are we even going to talk about it? Let's find out what they think.
Maybe our finance
I did have the
director.
opportunity to look through the budget law. It addresses.
Why is she suggesting the budget director, the finance director? Because the finance director and Cheryl Walker are like this, and he's going to say what she would like to say, but he's going to seem as if he's just completely independent of anything else. They won't even need to bother with that, though.
The role of the Budget Committee, ultimately, the Budget Committee makes a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And so that's what we're doing right now.
Switch cameras.
It could be within the purview, I would say, based on everything I've read, unless the finance director objects to that. I would say that this is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And
She
so
gives them an
frankly, yes,
odd.
in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I could amend my motion to say make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
No, it's okay. Everything that the Budget Committee does is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. But that being said, I believe that it is in the purview. Mr. Welch.
Question for Arthur. Is it necessary to have a separate fund inside the Public Works?
Is it necessary to have a separate fund inside Public Works? What's the purpose of having the separate fund inside Public Works? To make absolutely sure that you know that that money can be available for road dollars or roads. And so what Peggy Goodwin wants to be sure is that everybody knows that the money is available. So Cheryl says, well, can we even do that? And they're trying to get the finance director up there to verify that, no, you can't do these kinds of things, that would be illegal, or whatever he's going to come up with and say. And so now this guy is trying to get the finance director up to the microphone so that he can explain how, well, this isn't really necessary, because if you set it aside and said this would be available in a couple of different directions, then that would be available in a couple of different directions. You don't want to be that specific about all this. What you want to do is maybe put the money there and kind of be sort of purposely vague about it.
That would identify these dollars 2 years from now, 3 years from now, as not being eligible or being eligible for a transfer?
Mr. O'Hara, before you answer that, can you also reference when House Bill 4175 sunsets? Because my understanding is that it does have a sunset date of 2017, if I remember correctly, when it was first.
Now, Simon Hare knows perfectly well that sunset date, he knows it has, because this has come up several times, has been erased. He knows this. He knows it. Why is he saying this at the Budget Committee meeting? it's really kind of out of left field anyway, but it's a variant. You see how they use the finance director. Is the finance director going to say something that's kind of equivocal about it, or is he going to answer clearly? They hope, I believe, that he's going to be kind of equivocal about it or maybe make a mistake. But Arthur O'Hare hasn't forgotten what we all know, because you watch this show, that sunset is no longer in place.
Well, I think last year, actually, no, this year in March,
Extended it?
they removed the
Did they?
sunset.
Okay.
See, Simon knows.
The legislature did for that purpose, I guess, let it go on. To answer your question, Mr. Welsh, no, we wouldn't necessarily need, because we know what the deposits have been over the last, each year. We get them in one check once per year, so we know what's going into the fund. As far as the hierarchy of spending, trying to say, did we spend road fund dollars first or forest receipts first, that could be debated. But if you look, 2 points. If you look at the current budget, you'll see that we are not spending, we're increasing our ending fund balance in the roads and bridges reserve. So at least for this current funding, current year, 16-17, I don't think there's any question that whether the funds are being spent or not, because we're increasing it more than what the funds are being received. The second point I think you had made earlier is that whether or not this decision needs to be made today with this budget, or whether it should be more appropriate to be made in the 16-17 budget. We're in the 16-17, the 17-18 budget, where where the shortfall would be known.
Oh, yes. Can't we simply postpone this whole decision for a year? I mean, it is a fiscal emergency. It's a law enforcement emergency, but we don't even need to deal with that for the next year or so, right?
A little bit clearer at that point in time, a year from today, a year from this point in time. But no, it would not need to be in a separate fund in order to identify how much in road dollars have been received.
Although they've been commingling them.
So as a means to try to get us done on a timely basis, there are 9 private sector people in the audience, which at sorry, Ms. Fahey, I couldn't see you. That's 10. That's a half an hour given 3 minutes, and that would be putting us significantly over. I'd like to see that either
That never
there's more
happens.
debate, or we need to table this motion till the next meeting. But I need to move on for sake of time to the public comment, which is really the priority of the.
I move to table the motion till the next meeting.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to table the motion till the May 17th meeting of the Budget
Election
Committee,
day.
4 to 6. Any discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Goodwin,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Heck,
Yes.
Mr. Brumman,
Yes.
Mr. Hare.
Yes, motion carries unanimously to table this motion till the next meeting. Without any other, yes,
A
Mr.
quick
Wilson?
other,
Yes, sir.
can we ask Arthur to give an opinion on that, the idea of whether or not that is a necessary evil?
A
I
necessary
think you
evil.
already expressed that it's not absolutely necessary, but I think I can also hear Ms. Goodwin's concern with the ability to discern exactly how much is in that fund on her question last year. It's hard to say. It's kind of like a pool of money. It's a first dollar in, first dollar out. We don't do a determination like that. So you weren't here, but we had a considerable amount of deliberation on this issue last year.
Okay.
But Mr.
It is with the clarification or the defense of it, but also give the defense of it. I mean, why, yes or no? Not just, yes, we can, no, we can't, but what are the implications and with the defense of either position? Is it, why should it be justified? Why should it not be justified?
Now, what is Keith Eck asking the finance director to do? Do you see what a key role the finance director plays in what he says to the public? Keith Eck is now asking the finance director to give a value opinion about whether things should be done or shouldn't be done. Isn't that closer to the purview of the budget committee or maybe even the Board of County Commissioners? but they want to get as many of these people in a row to explain to you that the solutions, the even partial solutions, even lifeboat solutions for this wreck of the Titanic, those are just simply not possible, because, you know, lifeboats are not a permanent solution. And so let's sit in the water until the Carpathia, the rescue ship, arrives. Right. Keith, want to explain that a little bit more, bud?
I always fear for staff who's supposed to be giving an opinion, which is really the deliberation of this committee's responsibility. But
Quite
anyway,
right.
We'll open it up for public comment, which is item number 5. Please limit your comments to the subject matter at hand, which is the Josephine County proposed budget for fiscal year 2016-17. You'll be limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name first and last, clearly for the record, and where you live, just general proximity. Street addresses are not required. You'll be recognized by just putting your hand in the air, and then you can come to the podium. So
what had happened in an earlier year, a couple of years ago, when Keith Heck was not yet a commissioner and he was head of the budget committee, you just heard Simon Hare saying we need to get on to the 10 people that are in the audience. They didn't all speak. There was plenty of time. We need to get past this thing that Peggy Goodwin is suggesting, because it's gaining momentum and it's making a lot of sense. That's my feeling about it. So they did let a couple of people speak, but when Keith Heck was in charge of that committee before, the super important, that the citizens get a chance to speak, I was the only one back then that came to this meeting. This is, when Pat Fahey was on the group, and he said, I never heard Dale Matthews ever talk about the budget during a budget committee meeting. So I got up to talk about the budget. And I started into it, and Keith Heck said, well, we already know what you're going to say. That was Keith Heck before he was a commissioner. And he insisted that I sit down because I was saying things about the budget that they already knew. So no need for that, of course. So let's go on to one of the people that spoke, and I think that she made lots of sense. Here is someone that you probably haven't seen very often.
Kingery, Grants Pass.
would you mind spelling one or both of your names?
Mayana. Kingery is Kingery. I'm really grateful to have been here to hear this, and I totally support Ms. Goodwin and her request and the fiscal responsibility of keeping those funds separate, because as I heard, you can know what goes in, but you don't know what's been spent. And I do see in the conversation a concerted effort to keep dollars away from the public safety for a public purpose, because you still continue to want to raise the property taxes to get that money, or go to the state to say, oh, look how dangerous we are in our public safety. When you have the ability to make a wise fiscal decision to support as best as possible with the funds you have available. I completely agree that the money that is coming in for a single title purpose should be kept separate from funds that can be spent. That it's a fiscal responsibility and a transparency concern, and this is the concern of the citizens of Josephine County with this commission, is that there is not transparency and you're not listening to the people. And the people want you to move the money to support what could be a devastating shortfall in the future. And while the sheriff isn't asking for money, well, maybe that's because you've directed him not to ask for money. Then from my opinion, that could very well be an agreement that you have with him as he presented his budget. That's what it appears. And I support the idea of putting that in a separate fund to be used in an emergency situation. I think that's a fiscally responsible thing to do. And Ms. Goodwin has a very clear fiscal idea of how it should happen. And you're lucky to have her on this committee. And I don't know her personally.
Now take a look here, and you'll see Mark Sullivan's about to talk. I think there were 4 people who spoke. There's Harry Harris, and there's Nathaniel Duarte. They had nothing to say. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just that at this current time, this part of the meeting took place well after regular work hours. How many people are running for office? 17, I think it is. Where's everybody else making comments? And even if you cannot come to that meeting, is there any other place where you can make a comment about what you think about the budget committee and what the county commissioners are doing, or how important the budget committee is? Especially if you're there and could speak, and you don't. Okay, it's their personal choice, but I don't understand how you're going to represent people if you've got nothing to say. That's just a personal thing of mine. Okay, so here is a last comment, which I think is a really good one. I like this guy. I don't like all of his choices, but I like this guy.
Bill Hunker, Merlin, Oregon. It's always good to follow Mark. He comes with a lot of energy. It seems to me that 2 things are going on, and they're a rock and a hard spot for you guys in particular. And that is, you'd like to declare a fiscal emergency for public safety. At the same time, you could do something about it. The problem is that the public is going to be very hard to convince. If this is indeed a push for creating a crisis a year from now, 2 years from now, to push the public into this, they're already seeing the heels dug in now. And when you push for that levy, they will remember the fact that what you could have done, you didn't do. And the track record for levies is getting worse. It's not getting better. You know, if you were chipping off a percentage each time that you went out, and you were willing to spend another, let's just up it. Let's say you spend $200,000 next time. When you go down by twice what you did the year before, and you spent as much as you did, I don't think that you're going to find there's going to be a turnaround, even though you're creating a lot of pressure to have a turnaround. The public has bigger heels, and they can dig deeper than you can, and they have. And you guys have thrown every bit of your talent, a tremendous amount of money. You lose. And you don't lose just a little, you lose double again. So I would think very carefully whether you're moving with the public to give them something, or are you digging in your heels because their heels are much, much bigger than yours. They can say no, you can do nothing about it. So if you don't give them something, they're going to remember. Thank you.
So I'm going to reemphasize that you're addressing the budget committee. They don't have discretion, and it's very clear that the governing body under House Bill 41
Switch cameras.
And Chapter 753 of the Oregon law concerning the emergency clause, it is the governing body of the county that has the discretion to do that, and not the budget committee. So it's really important that we keep those a little bit separate here today. Anyone else wish to address the budget committee tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the budget committee for any comments, brief as they may be. Yes, Mr. Heck.
Just talking about the Sheriff Dave Daniel, I cannot envision Mr. Daniel being manipulated by anybody. And I think it is an insult to his integrity and his involvement in the community as a police officer in Grants Pass, and also leader of the sheriff's department, sheriff's office in Josephine County.
I just wanted to point out that Keith always has some chuckling to do about people who question the integrity of the board, or in this case, the sheriff. Go ahead and chuckle, old boy.
Insinuate that he could be forced to do something that he did not want to do. I mean, it's comedic. It's so far unbelievable. It's so far off the believability charts. But I just want to make sure that the Sheriff Daniel knew that I had no receipt for that kind of slur on his character, that he could be somehow manipulated. So.
Okay. So you saw 2 nights ago the sheriff's presentation to the budget committee, where he was supposed to be, well, we thought that he was going to be requesting more money. But the budget committee, the Board of County Commissioners, gave the instructions to their department just about a year ago that they wanted a status quo budget. So that's what the sheriff asked for, a status quo budget in the middle of an emergency. That's what she was talking about. That's what they've been talking about. The audience has been talking about when they say, you know, hey, where's the sheriff? And, you know, I would love to set aside money for the guy. I'm not for higher property taxes, partly because we're all not for higher property taxes. We've made that clear, but they're not going to live within their means. When he ran for election, he said, I will live within the money that you give me, and then he didn't do so. Now he's finally doing so. And he's not pressing for more money in the middle of an emergency. The other thing to remember is that the roads funds now apparently have more money in them than they've ever had before. And it's supposed to be a status quo budget for everybody but the roads funds? Where did this come from? Does anybody remember anything about emergency and roads funds in the past? Well, yes, there's a need for all kinds of things. If there's a cholera outbreak, if there's a road slide, if there's what could happen with another department, some kind of emergency and some kind of other situation, of course, you're going to need to use your personnel and your money to be able to take care of that. Roads funds? Well, the reason they've been dragged into this is because the state legislature said that you could help support your local sheriff by using some roads funds for roads patrols. And they had in mind 3 specific counties when they said that. And these commissioners don't want any type of solution that could possibly lead to something that would help solve the problem. They're just not going to allow that. So here we are. I think that Bill Hunker is right. I think that people will remember this. And I told the budget committee when I spoke in front of them that this is their last hurrah. If we have anything fortunate happening at all, that they will no longer be the budget committee. We'll make sure of that, and we'll have Peggy Goodwin on there. And it's going to be Simon Hare, who is super pro-levy, and 5 others who are going to, in my opinion, should listen to the will of the people and also help fund a sheriff that, while the sheriff may not personally do a lot of respect for the stand or lack of stand that he's taken, the office itself is important. And that's why, well, in front of you, I don't come with a tie, but every time I go to a county commissioners meeting, I wear a tie. I try to dress up a little bit and I say tough things to them, tough love, but I respect the office, if not the person. And so if we want the sheriffs to be funded to the point at which things could be done, there are a lot of things that can be done. And what I'm hoping is that the new bunch that comes in is going to take that into account and make the kind of decisions that make things, easier for us to see as citizens that they are good stewards of our money. And what this meeting showed, and what we've been showing over the last several nights, is they are not, and they are not willing to move forward for a very specific reason. They want one solution only, and that is for you to pay higher property taxes. And instead of funding the sheriff first, they're funding the sheriff last. And he's cooperating with that. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. You have a few days left. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'll be on my own tomorrow night. Well, you'll be there with me. And then Mike will be back on Thursday. Good night, everybody.